This week, February 9th to February 15th, we have Pluto stepping into brand new territory it's never been before. So that means that our deepest desire is finally feeling refreshed. We're finally feeling like we aren't overturning stones to understand the deeper meaning of something. Pluto moving into a degree that it has never been before signals that we are connecting to our Pluto, our deepest desire, in a way we haven't before. In the sign of Aquarius, this is about connecting to the desire of how we use our minds, okay? So that's already happened actually over the last few days, but I think we're going to be feeling it much more strongly this week. The other exciting things happening this week, apart from, of course, Friday, the 13th, when Saturn enters Aries, which I'll talk about briefly. But we also have Venus entering Pisces on Tuesday, the 10th. And we have Mercury entering its pre-retrograde shadow period by making a conjunction to the North Node, which to me essentially means that this Mercury retrograde is incredibly important and they're all important. And I have a lot to say about Mercury retrograde specifically because I do not think you should change anything you are doing. I don't think you should be cautious at all at any point about what you're saying, about what you think, about what you're thinking. I think you need to own yourself. I think you need to own your desires. You need to own your impulses, and you need to let yourself be free. The fundamental meaning for me as an astrologer of life, of astrology, of everything in this universe of multiplicity that we live in, the true purpose is unconditional love. The true purpose is emptiness. And I mean this both in a very mystical sense, but also probably more importantly in a very literal sense. I do not believe that things need to mean things. I think we imbue every object in our lives, we imbue every moment, we imbue every narrative with the meaning that it has. Nothing intrinsically has a narrative. And with Neptune now in Pisces, with Saturn about to be in, I'm sorry, with Neptune now in Aries, with Saturn about to meet Neptune in Aries, we're about to reset how we make our dreams come true, which has everything to do with how we're telling the story of our lives, which has everything to do with Mercury, which has everything to do with this dream, this forward motion that we find ourselves, the track, the magnetic destiny pathway that we think we're walking, which is the North Node in Pisces, and seeing as, again, this Mercury retrograde journey that we're going to be going on in a few weeks here is pretty much locked to the North Node, in Pisces. There is a very clear direction here, and I do not want you to gaslight yourself into thinking that you need to second guess your purpose at this time. And again, I'll tell you, don't let me tell you what your purpose is, but think about very, very deeply what you want, because what you want is your purpose. Okay? That's it. That if you'd like, you don't have to watch the rest of the video, because honestly, astrology, any other system, any other spiritual system, any other system that is totally not spiritual at all, you could say finance, you could say art, like any system, these are all simply fractals of the same thing, morphing out and doing the same thing over and over and over again. But where it starts is within you, where it starts is within your brain. We see that, and the importance of that in the signature of Pluto moving through the sign of Aquarius. As I mentioned, Pluto being now in a brand new part of the sky. It's never been before. Again, our minds are free right now in a way. There's no precedent for where Pluto has been. So we are charting that precedent in every moment. And in fact, I think it's a little bit easier to be creating neural pathways right now, the brand new neural pathways, the brand new ways our minds are working right now, because Pluto is in this position. It's not to say later on, once Pluto moves retrograde, which I think happens in May, not to say it's not possible to be rewriting your life in every moment. No, it's always possible. But I have this image, this understanding, this feeling that When Pluto is in this new territory as it is right now, it's like fresh snow. And, later on, once it goes retrograde, we're going to be always able to conjure more snow, right? To like fill in the space and to lay down new tracks, right? But it's kind of like fresh snow right now from a psychological perspective. Uh, with the only caveat, of course, that Saturn for most of this week is at that very final degree of Pisces, which is very heavy, potentially heavy in nothingness, heavy in a search for meaning, heavy in a quest for purpose that will never be fulfilled. And that's going to be kind of the Uno reverse catch 22 of later this week when Saturn enters Aries. It's going to be suddenly there is something, not because we got a resolution on the thing we've been waiting for, but because suddenly there is something. Let me say that again. Pisces doesn't end. Even the 29th degree doesn't bring resolutions in Pisces. It can't. It's the final degree of the final sign, which means it is the abyss. It's like every degree of the abyss is still the abyss. Okay? The only difference is right now, Neptune is in Aries, Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, in Aries. We can see the edge of the abyss in a way we weren't able to prior to January 26th, prior to when Neptune was in Aries, because Neptune itself was in Pisces, which meant there was no end, there was no edge to the abyss. That's the way I've been thinking about it and seeing it and feeling it. But we are in these last few days of this week where Saturn, which is the contents of reality, Saturn is the thing that you can like touch and see and interface with. Saturn is the weight that makes things real, gives things differentiation. Saturn is the fractal structure from which Pluto in Aquarius, your desire right now is being created, can only be created through Saturn. Okay? Saturn in Pisces creating a Pluto in Aquarius structure right now says until Friday, we are still very deep in this soup of creating a limitless reality, which is wonderful. Like there's nothing again wrong with this. I don't truly believe in moral hierarchy right now, and I know that's um, concerning potentially for some people. For me, it's not. I think you must do what you want to do, and it's going to feel easier to do that. It's going to feel more natural to do that once Saturn steps into Aries, because suddenly reality has tangible manifestation, whereas Saturn in Pisces has been all about the material reality not being reliable. Several years ago, what would have been 2023, is that right? About thereabouts, when Saturn first entered Pisces, I had this very strong feeling that reality wasn't going to work in the way that we could predict. The fractal wasn't going to keep generating itself. The recursive structure wasn't going to be what we thought it was. It wasn't going to be reliable. Even so much as I felt as though astrology wasn't going to work very well in terms of being able to accurately predict, um, being able to fulfill the intention of what we thought it was for, perhaps what I thought it was for. And in these 3 years, what's been my main takeaway of astrology and any system of thought, any way that we look at the patterns of the world in this life and we make sense of them and we use them for self-reflection, what I've found is that systems are endless. Okay? Time isn't going to end. Astrology is going to go on forever. Literally. There is no first principle. There is no core. Okay? When it comes to the truth, I don't think an end exists. Some would say it's turtles all the way down. Okay? I don't, I, trust me, I feel like I've been digging for years. digging for years. I have a Pluto in the ninth house in Sagittarius, okay, in my natal chart. So I'm very, right? If you understand that signature, you'll understand ninth house in Sagittarius is very much so about what the meaning is, what the synthesis of it all is, what Pluto creates a deep desire to understand and to become one with that area of life. And so I have been digging. I will be continue to dig for the rest of my life. But what I have found while digging is that it doesn't end. And, or perhaps it has ended in a sense, but what I found is emptiness. What I found was like very neutral emptiness. And I found though that in moments of profound disillusionment, I'm also a Pisces rising, so Neptune, Saturn has been in my first house. 14 years having Neptune in your first house, it's hard to even realize that you exist when Neptune's moving through your first house. And so that's been my journey of realizing that I exist since what, 2012, 2013. Anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. But now that Neptune's out, I feel like I have an edge again, which is fun. So consider in your own life where you're coming out of not just a 3-year spell with Saturn in Aries, but also a 14-year spell of understanding the edge and what specifically that edge, the implications of that edge mean for your life, for the cosmology of why you live the way you do, why you make the decisions that you do. But don't let yourself get caught up in an intellectual spiral, because that's kind of what Pluto in Aquarius wants you to do. Pluto in Aquarius, insofar as it will drag you into the depths of hell to realize that ultimately it's just about choice. You choosing how to use your mind in any moment, in every single moment, and you choosing to live in this, from this perspective of unconditional love, of emptiness, being the capital T truth, the unknowable truth of emptiness, of unconditional love. And that in Aries now, Neptune in Aries must start with unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness for yourself. Now, especially over the last 14 years, especially over your whole lifetime, especially over whatever conglomeration of lifetimes you think you can remember if you're into that. But the importance, the highest importance, I think, right now is on self-forgiveness. That will be true for the next 14 years as Neptune is in Aries, but as Saturn will be in a new phase with Neptune from next Friday, we are going to be actually taking action on that new understanding of self. Does that make sense? And so we're in this in-between period this week, another in-between period this week and next week, where we're not rebuilding out our life based on this new empowered sense of self where we are leading ourselves. But what's happening is we are restructuring our mind and our belief system, probably in the sense that Pluto's in this new territory. We're letting our brain change first so that external reality, the Saturnian reality, can catch up. The physical reality is a lagging indicator. Okay. It's not as quick as your mind is. And so it's kind of just like that. Saturn is going to take its time till Friday to catch up, enter Aries, join this fire. And it's interesting. It's very going to be very nice with Venus being in Pisces from Tuesday. I think we're going to be feeling much more empathetic, much more connected to love and a sense of warmth, especially after Aquarius season. The distance, the coldness of Aquarius season. This is kind of also the last week and a half of Aquarius season. And so I think we're kind of finding ourselves in the dead of winter, either literally or proverbially, and missing some of the tangible warmth. So when Venus moves back into Pisces, we're going to be feeling feelings again, I think. And that's going to, at some point, cross over the North Node. Mercury is going to be making a conjunction to the North Node as it enters its pre-retrograde shadow again. And so, as I mentioned, do not, do not second guess yourself just because Mercury is going into shadow. Trust yourself. Trust yourself to write the poetry that you need to write, to say the sweet things that you need to say, even if you have to change them later on. Do not second guess yourself with a Mercury retrograde. Do not let that idea of the movement backwards, do not let that gaslight you, okay? Because what's happening next week is we have eclipse season beginning, okay? I'm so done with the rhetoric around Mercury retrograde. I'm so done with it in terms of it being not a good time to start things. I'm over it. I'm entirely over it. I don't even know what else to say. Treat it like it's not even happening, guys. But what I think the wisdom of a Mercury retrograde is that you can watch your brain move differently. You can actually see how malleable your logic is because Mercury, strangely, is that planet of linearity and of logic and of things making sense, rules Virgo, right? Virgo is how things actually work. Virgo is like the IKEA instructions of how to actually make a desk that you can use so that you can do the work that you really want to do, right? And that's Mercury. That's the step by step. And so in Pisces, it's it's wonderful because we get a step by step in the mystical. We get a step by step in the world of unconditional love where it otherwise over the last several years was very serious. This Pisces area of life was very serious and very confusing with Neptune being there. And so I think this Mercury retrograde that's about to start in a few weeks, being near the North Node, there's nothing to be cautious of here. All you need to do is not restrict your speech, and you need to trust what you want. You have to trust your heart. I think I know this has been the case for me. So much of my grief, so much of my learning, so much of my pain has been coming from me restricting my own heart, me restricting my own feelings and thoughts and communications, and specifically the translation of what's going on inside to expressing that on the outside. That's where I have betrayed myself the most. And so with Neptune in Aries, with Saturn about to be in Aries in this time, again, we are preparing to take responsibility for all these things in such an immediate way that we have never before, which kind of means that before Friday, before Saturn joins Neptune, as Saturn is still in this very last degree, as Venus joins in Pisces, as Mercury passes the North Node and enters its shadow, the Piscean, we are beginning to understand it from a linear way that we have never before. And I think the purpose of that is to forgive ourself. Again, from a nonlinear perspective, to forgive all of the times we made the same choice to betray our own empathy, to betray the limitlessness, specifically in Pisces, of our own empathy. Because while it's Venus, and Venus is very lovely with Pisces, it's not about Libra or Taurus, even. It's not about someone else. It's not about this material enjoyment of reality. It's Pisces. Pisces is everything. Pisces is God. Pisces is the universe. Okay, so this is a universal sense of love. And as I think about it, the biggest loves of my life have been universal. And it makes sense that it feels wrong. It feels wrong to put that on someone. And even when I did, I felt like I betrayed them. I felt like I betrayed myself. So I think there's been just so much happening in Pisces, returning at this stage, at this 29th degree, to unconditional love, returning to a sense of limitless forgiveness and understanding where any of this resonates with you becomes your cosmology, becomes the mental framework from which all of your desires flow through, if that makes sense, because Pluto is really the generator here. Pluto is what's generating everything that you want in your life. And in Aquarius right now, Pluto in Aquarius wants to transform your perspective, your identity as a human, your identity as one of a larger group, your identity of one that has individuated itself from a group. And now, with this added emphasis of Aries coming in more and more strongly, all you do is exist. And so, talk about the like profound forgiveness that it would take to like allow yourself to sit back and just be and know that you're worthy. And we've heard that a lot in spiritual communities over the last 10 years. I know I have. But this is the time to actually do it and watch as your reality changes, not because something magical is going to come to you, but because you decide to act differently. Mars in Aquarius rules all of this, not only Saturn and Neptune in Aries, but once Venus moves into Pisces tomorrow, the rulerships also switch because Venus in Pisces becomes ruled by Neptune in Aries, which becomes ruled by Mars in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus in Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. So we get a much more complex rulership structure once Venus moves into Pisces. And so, in terms of how this week is going to flow, I think Tuesday is going to feel like a rush of being able to kind of sit down in our emotions for the first time. Wednesday and Thursday is going to feel somehow we can make sense of something very poetic happening, but I think we will also have a knowing that there is a larger loop that's going to come around in the next 2 months through this retrograde journey. And I think we also know that there's so much beyond us moving and shaking right now that we can't even begin to think we have a grip on simply because of this Saturn Neptune balsamic, because next Friday they reset a literal 36-year cycle. And of course, this whole time, Pluto being in this new degree, it's a good time to let yourself be moved in your mind, open your mind, start listening to new music, like start reading new things. Give your mind a lot of fodder for the fire that is to come. But more importantly than anything, hold yourself in love unconditionally, forgiveness unconditionally. That is all that I have for now. Thank you if you got in touch about doing the rulerships workshop. We're postponing it. So I will be back in touch with those of you who reached out. And until next time, let me know what's going on in your life in the comments. You can go ahead and get a reading with me. I put out availability every week or so. And so check it out. And yeah, bye for now.